Welcome to Artificial Evidence, where history's most chilling mysteries are unearthed and examined. My name is Owen Carver, and today's story is one that lingers on the border between superstition and cold, hard reality. Picture a quiet village tucked deep in the English countryside in the year 1938, a place where traditions are strong, strangers are few, and secrets run deep. Ashbury Pines was just such a village, a picturesque spot with winding cobblestone streets, a single church steeple piercing the sky, and the dense whispering woods that surrounded it like a cloak. But what happened there in the months leading up to World War II turned this idyllic setting into a place of terror. This is a story about a cursed family heirloom, a string of violent deaths, and a desperate search for answers that would span decades. The algorithm knows. So, let us begin. In the spring of 1938, the Ashbury family gathered for what would be their final reunion in the sprawling stone manor they called home. The Ashburys were a well-known name in the region, a family whose wealth had been built on generations of successful trade. But beneath their polished exterior lay fractures, old grudges, feuds over inheritance, and a growing paranoia about the family's most infamous possession, the Ashbury Locket. The locket was a delicate, ornate piece of jewelry that had been passed down through the family for centuries. According to legend, it had been forged by a metalsmith in the late 1600s as a token of love for his wife. But after her sudden death, the locket became a symbol of misfortune. Every Ashbury who wore it met a tragic end. For years, the locket remained locked away in a wooden chest in the manor's attic, until Henry Ashbury, the family patriarch, decided to retrieve it. Henry was a practical man who dismissed the stories as nonsense. He believed the locket could be sold to bolster the family's dwindling finances. But when he wore the locket to the reunion dinner, the events that followed were anything but rational. Within hours of putting on the locket, Henry collapsed at the head of the long dining table. His face turned ashen, his breathing shallow. The family doctor, who happened to be in attendance, declared it a sudden heart attack, but whispers of the curse began immediately. Over the next week, strange occurrences gripped Ashbury Pines. Villagers reported seeing flickering lights in the manor's upper windows late at night. The family's prized hunting hounds were found dead in the garden, their bodies arranged in a perfect circle. And then, on the seventh night, Henry's eldest son, Charles, disappeared. Charles's body was found 3 days later in the woods just beyond the manor grounds. His throat had been slashed, and in his hand, he clutched the Ashbury locket. The coroner declared it a murder, but there were no leads, no footprints, and no sign of a struggle. The villagers began to avoid the manor entirely, convinced that whatever haunted the family had spilled over into their quiet community. The surviving Ashburys, desperate for answers, turned to a London-based detective named Eleanor Hardwick. Eleanor was known for her unconventional methods and her willingness to explore cases others deemed unsolvable. She arrived in Ashbury Pines that summer and immediately immersed herself in the mystery. Eleanor's investigation uncovered a web of secrets within the Ashbury family. She learned that Henry had been estranged from his younger brother Samuel for years over a land dispute. Samuel, who lived in a small cottage on the edge of the village, had been seen arguing with Charles shortly before his disappearance. But when Eleanor confronted Samuel, he insisted he had nothing to do with the deaths and revealed something even more disturbing. The locket, he claimed, had not been in the attic for years. Samuel believed Henry had lied about its discovery and that the locket had been circulating among the family members, passed in secret to settle debts or secure favors. This revelation opened a new line of inquiry. Eleanor began tracing the locket's movements over the past decade, uncovering a series of unexplained deaths and disappearances among distant relatives. As Eleanor pieced together the timeline, a chilling pattern emerged. The locket seemed to change hands just before each tragedy, as if it carried a dark influence that compelled its wearer to act or become the victim. The case reached its climax when Eleanor staged a ruse to catch the killer. She arranged for the locket to be displayed in the village church during a memorial service for Charles. Under the cover of darkness, she and a constable hid in the rafters, waiting for someone to take the bait. At midnight, a shadowy figure approached the locket. It was Samuel, holding a bloodied knife. But as Eleanor descended to confront him, she realized he was not alone. Behind him stood another figure, Sarah Ashbury, Henry's youngest daughter, her face pale and blank. The truth unraveled in a chaotic confrontation. Sarah had been the one orchestrating the murders, driven by a twisted belief that the locket's curse could be harnessed to secure the family's fortune. Samuel, terrified of his niece's madness, had been trying to stop her but ended up being manipulated into her scheme. In the end, Sarah was taken into custody and the locket was sealed away in a vault. But the villagers of Ashbury Pines remained uneasy, convinced that the curse would resurface someday. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the shadows of Ashbury Pines. The tale of the Ashbury Locket reminds us that even in the most picturesque settings, darkness can take root. As always, I am Owen Carver, and this is Artificial Evidence, where the algorithm knows. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider sharing the podcast and leaving a review. Your support helps uncover more hidden mysteries from history's most fascinating cases. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.